All right, so part two of the river waterfall build turned out to be a landscape build. I started refacing the waterfall, carving rocks out of that, fixing some things that were not quite right with the scene on the top right of the waterfall, and then I finished the back facing of the waterfall to color it, add some moss and texture to it. I then worked on the lower river rapids to get them where I wanted, and I knew I had some scenery and coloring that needed to be completed before I could finish the waterfall in the lower river rapids. What I hadn't thought about was the landscaping, grasses, bushes, trees, and even ballasts that were going to have to be done at some point. And I realized that they needed to be done now, before I started installing the falls and more of the river features, as that landscaping material would end up everywhere and would make a mess of the water features. So this video covers everything I did up to actually adding the various water features to finish off this scene.
So I've added some rock formations to the top of the waterfall to extend it out a little bit so I get a drop that's not right up against the back wall. And I think I like this. It might be a little bit too much. I don't know. We'll see after I make the waterfall with the water effects and see where it lands. I added additional rock in here the other day, and then I carved this out. And then I had a mishap up here. I was leaning on this a little bit while I was doing some of this, and it just was not supportive enough, and it cracked. So now I've made this a lot thicker. I'll carve some rocks out of that. So that's where we're at right now. I'm going to get some rock faces into this and see how it looks. Might just leave some of it just like that because it actually doesn't look too bad, but I need a little bit more texture in those rocks. I figured I'd pop the video here while I carve out some of these rocks so you can see how I do this. This is just lightweight hydrocal that I had put in underneath of some of the precast rocks that I put in here. And now I'm just going to carve some of this out I want to round off some of these edges on some of the top ones because you're going to have a waterfall rolling over here and that would wear those down. So we'll just take the edge off of those and just figure out how we can dig in here and create a little bit more texture to these rocks. Some of them are easy enough to get to, but other ones are a little bit harder. Definitely want to take off some stuff that's sticking out. And it's just, play around, see what happens. I enjoy carving rocks. It's kind of fun. I might create a little bit of a hole there. I'll have to go back and patch that. I need a shorter handle on my blade. I might actually have to get a different razor blade to do some of this carving. This one's one of those places where it's a little bit tough to get in here. But we can work with it. See this rounded edge here, we have to make that go away for sure. There's no water hitting that back there to cause that to be rounded over. Oh, look, I got a little cave in here apparently. And I'll just keep playing around with this until I get it to where I want. I'll clean it all up and then I'll get some color on it. I got the waterfall back facing done. It looks really, really good. I'm very happy with it. I got a lot of moldy and green colors, you know, for algae growth that is going to sit back behind the waterfall. Got a little bit of work to do up there where I screwed up, and I want to get some rocks back against the wall here, just behind where the water is going to hit when I drop it down off of this. I got to figure that out exactly where that's going to be, so I make sure I don't have rocks sticking out right underneath the water. Then I'm going to have to start working over on the right side here, getting all this finished, and then on the left side getting that finished before I can actually do the pour of the epoxy in the base of the waterfall, because I don't want all of that mess ending up on top of the epoxy. So got a lot of work to do before I can pour the epoxy at the bottom of the waterfall, but I'm very happy with where I'm at here right now. So I started working on the lower river coming out of the pool where the waterfall will drop. I decided that I needed to do a better job of creating rapids in here. So just playing around with some ideas here. I'm going to let this dry and carve it out tomorrow. I think I'm really liking the way this is all coming out here. I got a lot of work to do in this area and still back in here. Probably a few more days before I'll be ready to pour epoxy in here. Probably another week, because I got a lot of coloring to do. Got to do the edges of the river and get some texture in the bottom like it did up top. So it's coming along though. So last night I laid out a bunch of light white hydrocal in here to create rock formations. And I started carving them this morning. Everything is starting to look pretty good. This is what it's going to look like from here. So I've got to carve out all these blobs on the right-hand side here and all the way down, and do a little bit more work on the lower end here. And then I have this thing tiered in such a way that I'm going to have the rapids coming down through these rocks coming out of the basin where the waterfall lands. And so I'll show you progress as I get through this. So after carving for about an hour, this is what I've got. You can look at it from many angles here. Looking pretty good. I think I'm very happy with this for the basin for the rapids. We'll see how things go. I got to color this at some point and seal it up before I start doing an epoxy pour. I gotta look around and see what other stuff I need to finish up, because I have some work up there to do. I've got some gaps in the walls up here, so I've got to fill those in, and that way when I start doing coloring, I can just color everything one more time and finish up everything down here. This whole flat area here is actually going to be a gravel road coming in all the way into here, because I have plans for finding some N-gauge kayaks and kayakers to be coming down this river through these rapids. Hopefully I'll be able to find some of that stuff. I've seen them in pictures, so I'm pretty sure I'll be able to find them maybe on eBay or somewhere. But that's about it. I think the river is just about ready for color. I got to do a few more things before I color it though, and then we'll be ready to go. Got the coloring done on the front part of the mountains and the lower river. It looks pretty good. I have a lot of touch-up work to do around the edges before I call this done. And I also have to paint the base and seal the base for the epoxy pours that are coming up. In the process of waiting for my coloring to dry that I had done just to see where things were, I realized something. If I do not do some of this scenery with the vegetation before I do the waterfall and the rapids, I'm going to end up with that stuff all in the waterfall and the rapids unless I'm extremely careful, and I'm never really careful. So I can make a mess at any time. So I decided I would start putting some vegetation in, and I put some scenic glue down, and then added some of the fine turf, burnt grass, and the blended turf earth blend, as well as some coarse blends up here. There's different color coarse blends up there. And went all the way around over to here. And I even made a mess up in the rapids up there a little bit, and I was able to vacuum most of that out. But I was realizing that I have to do all of that work for that turf in order to, before I put the waterfall and the rapids in down the bottom. One of the things that I didn't like using scenic glue up here. It took coat after coat after coat of scenic glue to keep putting this down and layering. So I'm going to try something a little different when I get over to here, because I got to do some work over here. I'm going to try using some Mod Podge mat as a base, because I think I'll get better stick on the base material. And then for putting in bushes and things like that, I'm going to try and use the Mod Podge, and then I'll finish it with scenic glue to get anything else to stick down that is laying on top. Because I'm not going to come through and vacuum over top of this. It's not going to move all that much, but I also don't want a whole bunch of little pieces to fall on the track while I'm running my trains at some point in time. So that's what I'm going to do. I will videotape while I do while I do the next section of that. I'm going to finish this whole side, then I'm going to start working on the right side of the river and waterfall and get all of that scenery done. With the vegetation that needs to go in there, there's going to be like a gravel road down on the right here side of the river here. I'll put that in, get all of that stuff done, and you can watch how I do chunks of that. So I'll start by putting down some of the Mod Podge. See how this does compared to the scenic glue. The scenic glue worked just fine. I just thought it was an awful lot of extra work to constantly be spraying and spraying and spraying and spraying and spraying with every layer I put in. And then even after it dried, whoops, that was a mess. I'll have to go get that one. It just seemed like an awful lot of work. So I'm going to try this. I may end up going back to the scenic glue. Who knows? Get a towel and get this glue up. See, I told you I make a mess. So I don't want to be doing this and having to deal with all the mess I make. Some of the stuff I'm just going to sprinkle little bits of material in here. I'm not going to have a ton of stuff. And anything that doesn't stick in some of these places, I'm going to vacuum up. One of the things I have to be careful of is that river. When I was spraying scenic glue up here, I oversprayed onto that river, and it almost made a mess out of the Mod Podge that's on top of the epoxy. So be careful about that kind of stuff, just forewarning. All right, so that looks like it's good enough. Now I'm going to start with my blended turf. The burnt grass, I should say, the burnt grass turf. Sprinkle a little of this on. And then I'm going to come back with my earth blend to get a little bit more brown in that. Probably put a little bit more inside the rocks there and up here in the front. And that looks pretty good. let that set up for a minute, and then we'll see how it looks. So I just did a little spray of scenic glue over top of all of this to set it down. I have a little space up here that looks like I missed, but I'll probably put a clump of bushes in there. I'm going to come back with some coarse blend, but let me see how this dries after putting the scenic glue on there. And then I'll add some bushes and then see where I need some additional blended turf. Added some additional vegetation around this tunnel portal. I cleaned up all my tunnel portals as far as the color. I'm going to start playing on this side here. I'm using the Mod Podge over here as well. I'll wipe off that stuff off of the face of that wall, but I want to get a lot of Mod Podge in here so I can put whatever plants I need to put down there. Texture. So probably should be using a smaller brush instead of being so ridiculously dumb. But you know, I do stuff like this. When I say I can make a mess, I can make a mess. But you know, I can fix it too. Yeah, it should be good enough since this dries clear and it is the matte Mod Podge, so it will not show up as a glossy finish there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of these grasses. I'll start with the burnt grass. This is the coarse burnt grass. I'm just going to pile it up here and kind of make it look like bushes growing, because it works just fine. I don't want all this too far out. I want to get it back in the crevices, right where the wall meets. Once my tweezers get glue on them, it becomes a little bit difficult sometimes. But I'm going to put some light green in here. Just a little teeny bit there. And then some more of the burnt. Trying to get this over right in that corner there, but sticking to my finger and pulling back out, sticking to the, there it goes. Okay, so we're good there. Good there. I think that looks pretty good. And yep, I'm kind of good with that. I also have this brown color. I think it's an earth color. I'll just stick some of that in there for the fun of it. And in order to make sure that holds down, I'm going to Drip some scenic glue onto it. And that should be good to go. I'll work on, I gotta repaint the front face of this in my concrete color, and then I'll be able to finish in that area. So I'm spotting some Mod Podge matte in different spaces. And then I'm going to add some of the textured, the fine turf into here, and I'm sure I'll get in some little coarse turf for bushes or whatever. The whole idea here is that I don't want it all over these rocks because I want to see a lot of what's going on here, but I'm also trying to get it to just kind of stick in places where it might not normally stick. But I don't want it on the whole rock, so that's why I'm just like kind of spotting through this. And then I'm gonna get some turf in that area. I'm gonna go that far and then I'll come back and work on the rest of that. So the way I'm doing this is I'm going to put some of the earth blend, because I think that's the right blend for this, and maybe a little bit of the burnt grass. Since I didn't explain to you guys what I'm doing here, what I'm doing is I'm mixing up the turf blends on a piece of paper, and then I'm blowing it into the places along the wall where I put the Mod Podge, and it just sticks to it, and it comes out really cool. And it's a great way to put pieces of the earth blend and the burnt grass onto the side of this cliff and have it stick by just using little bits of Mod Podge here and there. I did this at the bottom of the waterfall, and it came out great. That didn't come out as well as I wanted it to, so. That went better. Do a little bit more. Just a little bit more. Okay. So as you can see, we got some grasses in there, some on those cliffs there, coming all the way down, and it just sticks wherever there was glue. When I come back in after the fact and vacuum out all of the extra, it'll only be left exactly where I wanted it, which is where I put the glue. So just a little technique I saw somebody do when they were doing a model of a waterfall, and I thought it was a pretty cool idea, so I decided to use the technique here. I might do it again, depending on how it looks after it dries and after I vacuum it up. Now I'm coming back and Adding some coarse turf in a few spots. There's always stuff growing out of the rocks. Get rid of that. What I'm going to have to do at some point is I want to get some small trees sticking out of the rock formations here. Bring the light down a little bit so you can warm it up a little. You can see a little bit more of what I'm doing here. There we go. Looking pretty good. Something else I did while I was in here messing around a little bit, I decided to see what the ballast that I had would look like down here. I kind of like that brownish color better than the gray for this particular environment. I just think it's too reddish brown. I'm going to wait till it's dried because that has scenic glue sprayed on it to keep it in place. And then after it's dried, I'll see what it looks like. And I may add some darker, black/gray to it and see if I can weather it a little bit. I've been playing around with the ballast a little bit, trying to figure out what to do here. My original ballast that I put down, let me zoom out here, over here, is the medium ballast in brown straight out of the container. And I didn't like it. And I tried weathering it, and it sort of weathered okay, but it didn't really come out the way I wanted it to. So I took some ballast and I put it in a cup, and then I started adding some color to it, some grays and blacks into it to try and change the color of it. And as you can see, it's a little bit grayer, which is, I think, much more appealing. And it's not too bad. I can just mix up the color, and then I can just spread it out, on a piece of cardboard or whatever, on a piece of wood, and let it dry, and then you get that, which isn't too bad. And then when I start coloring it, like to try and add darker colors, because I have a mix of gray, black, and white to add weathering and color in the middle, and it works out pretty good, and it gets a nice color on it. Whereas the original one didn't quite do quite as well. So right now that's very wet, so it's a lot darker than it will dry. That is because I just put scenic cement on it to dry it up. I tried spraying scenic cement. It didn't work. I tried the, dripping it in with a dropper. That didn't work at first because when it's first in there, when I put a drop of scenic cement on it, it pulled all the ballast into one spot. So I haven't quite figured out how to put the ballast down effectively yet, but I'm going to work on it. I'm going to try some Mod Podge mat, and or at least on the outsides of the track, and see if that does better. And then I can just use the scenic cement in the rails, inside the rails, but I'll use Mod Podge on the outside, and hopefully that'll help it stick a little bit, because I've put like 3 coats of scenic cement, from my sprayer on there, and I have to tape up the tracks to do that, but I'm done with it now, and I'm hoping it'll be enough. But anyway, so I'm trying to get the ballast down, and I want to do all the ballast on these tracks. So I'm going to do back here on either side, not just up to the switch, in the back. But I have additional track. Let me zoom out here. So I have the additional tracks over here and down there to put down some ballast, and I'm going to work on that tonight. And then on the bridge in the back, I'm going to do ballast on either sides of the bridge, right up to the switch, and then I'll stop there because I have a lot more work to do up there. Okay, so I'm done doing the scenery on the right-hand side of the river up the top and down the bottom. Got the ballast in on the right-hand side. Everything is about where I want it to be. I might do some little touch-up work a little later on, add a tree here and bush there. But right now I'm all cleaned up and ready to start putting in my base for the bottom of the waterfall and the river. I'm going to start with the hunter green undercoat, and then I may add some blue or black to that in order to get a deeper color after it dries and I see what color we're at. Um, and then I'll move down the river. Most of this is going to just be undercoated real dark green because it's going to be a lot of heavy rapids coming through here. And then I'll detail out the way I did up top on the upper part of the river to lighten things up. Add some rocks and small stones and some some dirt-looking places underneath, and get ready for the pour. I will remember to seal up everything after I get the undercoat on. I got to make sure I seal around all the edges of everything here with the Mod Podge gloss I'll use. That'll get us all sealed up. Actually, I use the Mod Podge matte, not the Mod Podge gloss, because I'll have to take some of it up into the sides here, and I don't want that to be glossy after the fact. If I decide I want pieces to be glossy as if they're wet, I will come back with the Mod Podge gloss after the fact, but I want to make sure that I don't get stuff glossy that I don't want glossy. So as I do the finish work on the base of this before, to color everything and get it ready for the pours, I will videotape.
I put the bridges back in place so you can get a better idea of the direction this is going. I had ordered some trees and bushes and other stuff to add to the scene that were added later, but I think it looks great. The next video will be the falls in the lower river rapids. I cannot wait for everyone to see the finished product.